Hi and welcome to the channel. In today's video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how I made these adorable crochet bucket hats. So I'm going to be using purple for the hats I'm making in this video, but you can use any color that you like. And we're going to start off with making a magic ring. Now to make a magic ring, we're going to grab our yarn with our thumb to hold it, and we're going to use our two middle fingers, so the middle and index finger. Now while grabbing the yarn and holding it, you're going to dab the yarn diagonally around both fingers twice in opposite directions to make a X. And you're going to hold the other end of the yarn with your pinky and other finger to secure it. Now once you have everything and you're holding it nice and tight, we're going to grab our hook. Now with our hook, we're going to take it and we're going to slide it underneath the bottom piece of yarn. And once it's underneath the bottom piece of yarn, you're going to grab the top piece of yarn and pull it through till it's past the bottom piece of yarn again. I know it sounds confusing, but if you get confused, just rewatch it. Now we're going to turn our hook so that it faces towards ourselves, and then using the hook we're going to grab the top piece of yarn and pull it through that loop. And now you have your magic ring. Now with a magic ring, we use the smaller tail of yarn to tighten the circle and close the ring, and the top piece of yarn, the longer one, is what we'll be using to work and crochet with into the ring. So now we're going to chain 2, and to make a chain we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook and then pull the yarn through that loop. So that's one chain. Now once again we're going to wrap our yarn over our hook and pull it through that loop, and that's the second chain. So this entire bucket hat will be made out of double crochets. And to make a double crochet, you're going to take our yarn over our hook and then insert our hook into the ring. Now using our hook again, we're going to pull up a loop with our yarn. So grab the yarn and pull it back through the ring. Now once you've done this, you need to have 3 loops on your hook. Now once you're sure you have 3 loops on your hook, you're going to yarn over again and pull your yarn through the first 2 loops only, and then yarn over again and pull it through the last 2 loops, and now we have a double crochet. So that is our first stitch, and the chain 2 we use to give us height to make the stitch. So we're making 10 double crochets in total. So for our second double crochet, we yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop with 3 loops on our hook, we yarn over, pull through the first 2, and yarn over and pull through the last 2. Now for our third stitch, the same thing, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop with 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the second 2. For our fourth one, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Our 5th one, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Our 6th one, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. For stitch 7, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through your first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through your last 2. Now our 8th one, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now our 9th one, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. Now for our last stitch, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. And don't worry, I'm not going to say this for the rest of the pattern. This is just because it's our first round, and we're going to make sure that we have our 10 stitches by counting. Once you've done that, we're going to tighten our circle by pulling on the smaller tail. And now we're going to close our circle by making a slip stitch. Now to make our slip stitch, we're going to go into our first stitch, our first double crochet that we made. So we're going to take our hook, insert it into the top of that stitch. Then we're going to yarn over our hook, pull it through that stitch, and now pull it through the loop that's on our hook. And that is a slip stitch. Now when we're done with our slip stitch, we're going to once again chain 2. We do this for the beginning of every new round. So yarn over, pull through, and yarn over, pull through. So now we can start with our second row for the top of the hat. Now in this row, we're going to do an increase in every stitch. So an increase is 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So in every single stitch we have, we're going to put 2 double crochets. So yarn over, insert our hook into that stitch, pull up a loop, 3 loops on a hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. And now we're going to make another double crochet in this stitch. But before we do that, we're actually going to mark our first stitch with our stitch marker. I actually forgot to do this for the first row, but this just ensures that we know which stitch is the first stitch and we don't get confused by our chain 2. Now once we've marked our first stitch, we're going to continue and put our second double crochet into that first stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And we can repeat this all the way across. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So now we've made 2 double crochet increases, and we're going to do this across the entire row. Now I'm not going to show you the entire row like I did with the first one, but if you get confused, you can always just rewatch it. So while you continue with this row, just remember that an increase is 2 stitches in 1. So now I'm at the end of our row and my last double crochet increase. Once you're done, you can count and make sure that you have 20 stitches. If you've messed up along the way, it's okay, we can always just restart. Now once you're done, we're going to close off our row again. So we're going to take our stitch marker out of our first stitch and we're going to insert our hook into that stitch. So insert our hook, yarn over our hook, pull up a loop and pull through our other loop to make our slip stitch and close off our row. Now starting off row 3, we're going to chain 2, so yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and we're going to do something different for this row. We're going to make a front post double crochet. So we're going to yarn over like normal to start with our double crochet, but now instead of going into our stitch like we've done before, we're going to go underneath our stitch. So we're going to take our hook and we're going to go under the double crochet, as you can see here. But then we're going to double crochet like normal. So we're going to yarn over our hook, pull up a loop, and with our 3 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So instead of going into the stitch, we're just going underneath the stitch, and then we're going to mark our first stitch so we don't get confused. Now into our next stitch, and make sure it's the next stitch, just move that front post double crochet down. We're going to do a normal double crochet increase, so 2 double crochets in that one stitch, and now we're going to do 1 double crochet in the next stitch, another double crochet increase, and then we're going to repeat the same pattern all the way around. So a front post double crochet which goes underneath our stitch, not in it, and then a double crochet increase, a normal double crochet, and then another double crochet increase. And we're going to repeat this 5 times all the way around our row. So front post double crochet underneath our stitch, and we're just going to repeat the pattern that's on the screen. If you do get confused, you can always just rewind and rewatch it, but I'm going to skip ahead now because it is very repetitive. Now once we reach the end of our row, we're going to do a double crochet increase with the rows for the top of the hat. It's always going to end with a double crochet increase. So if you do not end on an increase, you may have messed up along the way, and we can always just unravel our pattern and redo it. Now once again, we're going to close off our row. So we're going to take our stitch marker out of our first stitch, and we're going to take our hook, insert it into our first stitch, pull up a loop, and pull our yarn through that loop to close off our row. We're going to chain 2, and now we're starting with row 4. Now the rest of the rows are going to be very similar to the first one. It's going to follow a similar pattern, but we're going to increase our pattern by 1 stitch all the time. So for our first row, once again we're going to start with the front post double crochet. Now as you can see, it's more rows than the rest of the stitches, and now we're just going to yarn over, put our hook underneath the double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through our first 2, and yarn over, pull through our last 2. Next we're going to mark our first stitch again, just so we don't get confused. And now our pattern has changed by 1. So in our next stitch, we're going to do a double crochet. Only 1, not a increase. So 1 double crochet. Then in our next stitch, we're going to do an increase. And now we're going to do 2 double crochets in the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And we're going to end off with a double crochet increase. Now we're going to repeat this pattern 5 times, so 4 more times. We already did it once. So to start with the next segment, once again we're going to do our front post double crochet and do it underneath the double crochet, not in the stitch. And now we're going to repeat the pattern again. I'm not going to go through it this time. Since it is very repetitive, the pattern will stay on the screen and you can pause it and finish your row, or you can just rewatch me doing the first one if you get confused again. Now once we reach the end of the row, our last stitch is going to be a double crochet increase again. Like I said before, our last stitch is always going to end as an increase. If it is not an increase, you may have messed up along the way, and you can always just unravel the pattern and redo it. So now when we're done with our row, we're going to take out our stitch marker from that first stitch, insert our hook into the stitch, pull our yarn through and pull it through again to make a slip stitch and close our row. Now chaining 2, we're going to start with row 5. As you can see, the little day stitches become more visible as you go along, so now you always know when to do the front post double crochet because it's more obvious. So we're going to start off with doing our front post double crochet, and then in our next 2 stitches we're going to do a double crochet. So only 1 double crochet in each stitch, but a total of 2 double crochets. So our first one, and then our second one, and then an increase in the 3rd stitch. Oh, and also don't forget your stitch marker into your first stitch. So in our next stitch, a increased, so 2 double crochets in the 1 stitch, and now we're going to do 3 double crochets in the next 3 stitches. So as you can see, the pattern just increases, like in every row you just add 1 or 2 more stitches. That's why I'm not showing you everything, because it is very repetitive. So once you're done with your 3 double crochets, we're going to do a double crochet increase, so as you can see, our next stitch is a little more raised, so now we know it's our front post double crochet, which shows that we repeat the pattern again now. So you may pause to keep the pattern on the screen. Now once we reach the end of the round, once again we're going to do a double crochet increase in our last stitch. And if you do not end on an increase, something may have went wrong, but it's fine, we can always just redo the row. So now we can take our stitch marker out because it's the end of our row, and we're closing. Insert our hook into that first stitch, pull our yarn through and pull it through again to make our slip stitch and close the row. Next we're going to chain 2 to start row 6. So once again we're starting our row with our front post double crochet. So put our hook underneath the double crochet and continue the stitch as normal. Insert our stitch marker into the first stitch, and now for our pattern we're going to do 3 double crochets in the next 3 stitches first. So our first double crochet, our second double crochet, and then our 3rd double crochet. Next it is a double crochet increase, and then in our next 4 stitches it's normal double crochets. And lastly we're doing our double crochet increase before we do our front post double crochet, and we can start the pattern again. So remember to pause if you want to keep the pattern on the screen, and you can always rewind to make sure that you're following the pattern correctly. Now once we reach the end of our row, we're going to do a double crochet increase in the last stitch, and now as you can see, Our ridges are way more predominant, and each of these sections is actually going to be a petal for our flower. So now we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch. So take our marker out, insert our hook, pull through, and pull through again. Now this is our last row we're going to do for the top of the hat. So we're going to chain 2 to start our row, and as normal you're going to do our front post double crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to mark our first stitch with our stitch marker, and now next we're going to do 4 double crochets in the next 4 stitches. So our first double crochet, our second double crochet, our third double crochet, and then our fourth double crochet. This is actually also our last row for the top of the hat, and then in the next stitch we're going to do a double crochet increase, and now we're doing 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then a double crochet increase in our last stitch. And so once again, start off our new section with our front post double crochet, and you can pause the video or rewind it if you get lost, but the pattern is always going to be on the screen. Now that we're at the end of our row, we're going to do our double crochet increase in our last stitch, but this should also be our last double crochet increase we end off with a row, because this is our last row of the top of the hat. So we're going to do a double crochet increase, take out our stitch marker, and insert our hook in our first stitch, pull through and pull through to close it off. Now moving on to the middle of the hat, we're going to chain 2 to start off our new row, and we're going to do our front post double crochet as normal. Put our stitch marker into our first stitch, and now we're just going to do a double crochet into every single stitch. So there are 13 stitches in each little section, and then our front post double crochet. So we're going to do 1 double crochet into each of our 13 stitches, then our front post double crochet, and we're going to repeat the 13 double crochets and then the front post double crochet all the way down. So we're going to start off with our first double crochet, our second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. Then we're going to do our front post double crochet, and and we're going to repeat the same pattern all the way around. So you may pause to keep the pattern on the screen or rewind the video if you get confused. So unlike the top of the hat, our last stitch does not have to end on a double crochet increase. So we're just going to do one double crochet in our last stitch, and then to close off our round like normal, we're going to take out our stitch marker, insert our hook in the first stitch, pull our yarn through and through again. Now for the middle of the hat, we're going to repeat the exact same pattern for the rest of the rows. So for a total of 6 rows, rows 9 to 13, we're going to do our front post double crochet first, mark our stitch, and then do our 13 double crochets and repeat the pattern all the way around. So I'm not going to show all of this as it is very repetitive, and this is just going to make up our middle of the hat. So now we'll do our first double crochet, our second, our third, our fourth, our fifth, our sixth, our seventh, our eighth. And now just to show you, if you get confused by counting, the way I count is I look for the last row where we did an increase, because that's our last row of the top of the hat. So therefore all the rows after the row with the increase would be the rows for the middle of the hat, and that's how I count until we get to our 6th row and our final row of the middle of the hat. So now we can continue with our 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th double crochet before we start with our front post double crochet, and we continue with the pattern for the rest of the hat and for the next 5 rows. So 6 rows in total. Now I'm at the end of my 6 rows, and I'm going to do my last double crochet in the last stitch. Then we're going to take our stitch marker out, and we're going to close our row by inserting our hook in the first stitch, pulling our yarn through and through again. Now this is what our hat will start to look like since we've done the top and the middle, and you can see that all our little sections of our petals are way more visible than they were at the beginning, and we're ready to move on to the brim. Now we're moving along to our final part of the hat. So we're going to chain 2 and start the first row of our brim. Now as usual, we're going to do our front post double crochet into the first stitch, and then we're going to mark our stitch with our stitch marker. But this is where the pattern kind of changes. So now for the brim, we're going to introduce half double crochet stitches. but they are very similar to our double crochet, so don't be alarmed. Now, to do a half double crochet, like a double crochet, we're going to take our yarn and put it over our hook, insert our hook into the stitch and pull up a loop. But now, instead of pulling our yarn through the first two and then the other two, we're going to just yarn over and pull our yarn through all 3 loops. So yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. So now we've done 3, we need to do 2 more. So yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And for our final half double crochet, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. Now that we have 5, in our next stitch we're going to do a half double crochet increase. So yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3, and then make 1 more in the same stitch. Now in our next stitch we're moving back to a double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2, and we make 1 more because we're doing an increase. Now we're going to repeat the pattern again, but in reverse. So we're going to do a half double crochet increase. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And now we're going to do 5 half double crochets for the remainder of these stitches. So for the brim of the hat, we are going to make the petals. And like the top of the hat, it's going to get very repetitive because you're going to repeat the same pattern 5 times all the way around. So after our 5 half double crochets, we're going to do our front post double crochet, and then we're going to repeat the same pattern again. So please pause the video to see the pattern and rewind it if you get confused. So now we're at the end of our row and we've already did 4 half double crochets. So we're going to do our 5th one in our final stitch. And once we're done with our last half double crochet, we're going to take out our stitch marker as usual so that we can do our slip stitch into that first stitch and close off our row. So insert your hook, pull your yarn through and through again. Now we're going to chain 2. We start in our 15th row for the brim. So we're going to do our front post double crochet like normal, and then we're going to use our stitch marker and mark our first stitch. Now for this row we're going to start off with 6 half double crochets. So we're going to do 1 half double crochet, our second, our third, our fourth, our fifth, and then our sixth. Now in our next stitch, after you make sure we have all 6, we're going to do a half double crochet increase, so 1 and 2 half double crochets in the same stitch, and then we're going to move on to our double crochets. So now we're doing 3 double crochet increases, so 1 and 2 in the first stitch, another 2 in our second stitch, and our last 2 in our third stitch. And now we're doing the opposite on this side, so we're going to do another half double crochet increase, but instead of 6 half double crochets now we're going to do 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then our last stitch we're going to do a half double crochet increase, and we're doing this so that our second part of the row is the same as the first part of the row, and we have 6 half double crochets on both sides now. So once you do your half double crochet increase, you can count, and now we have 6 half double crochets before our increase, so our rows are mirrored. And now we can do our front post double crochet, and you may pause or rewind to repeat the pattern. Now once we reach the end of our row and we've mirrored it properly, we're going to do an increase in our last stitch. And now we can close off our row with our slip stitch by taking our stitch marker out as usual and inserting our hook into our first stitch and pulling our yarn through and through again to close it off. So now we're going to chain 2 to start our next row, doing our front post double crochet as usual. And this pattern is actually even this time, so you don't have to worry about making it even. We're just going to follow our pattern as it is on the screen and insert our stitch marker into the first stitch. So this is our last row of doing any increases, and as you can see, our little petals are starting to form. So now we're going to continue as usual and do our half double crochets, and we're doing 8 of them this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So now for the next 2 stitches we're going to do 2 half double crochets increases. So 1 and 2 in the one stitch and another 2 in the stitch after that. And now we're going to do 2 half double crochet increases. So 1, 2 and 1 and 2 in the next stitch. And now we're going to mirror our pattern again, so we're going back down with our half double crochet increases. So 1 and 2 in one stitch and 1 and 2 in our next stitch. And now all we have to do is our 8 half double crochets for the rest of the petal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and our 8th one. And now we do our front pass double crochet to start off our next petal, and we repeat like normal. So pause or rewind the video if you get confused. Now that we are at the end of our row and we've done our 7 half double crochets already, we're going to do our 8th one in our last stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch into our first stitch to close off our row. So we take out our stitch marker, insert our hook in the stitch, pull our yarn through and through again. Next we're going to chain 2 to start off our last row, and now we're going to do our front post double crochet as usual. Mark our stitch, and now we're just doing a half double crochet into every single stitch. So that's 28 half double crochets for the entire petal before we do a front post double crochet to start the next petal. So I'm going to just speed this part up, and you can pause to keep the pattern on the screen or rewind if you get confused, but I'm not going to show this part entirely because it's just normal half double crochets across the entire section before you get to your next front post double crochet, where you can start your next section and your next petal. So once you reach the end of your section or your little petal and you've done your 28 half double crochets, you can do your front post double crochet and start the next one. So once you're at your last stitch of the row, we're going to do our last half double crochet into the last stitch before we close off our row as usual. So we're going to take our stitch marker out, insert our hook into the first stitch, pull our yarn through and through again, but now we're going to chain 1. So yarn over, pull our yarn through, pull up a decently sized little piece of loop before we cut it, and now we're going to pull our little loop and tighten it. So once you've done that, we're going to take our darning needle and thread our wool through the eye of the needle, and then we're going to take our needle and we're going to just put it through all the little half double crochets at the end. So I like to just put it through like this, in between each half double crochet, and I do it for maybe 4, 5 or 6 before I just pull it through and cut it eventually. You can do it through however many or little you want. So once it's in, I'm going to get my scissors again and cut it. And now our tail is nice and tucked in and neat. We're going to do the little tail on top. So the same thing, we're going to thread our wool through the eye of the needle. And what I like to do with the top, so it doesn't become loose later on, is firstly put our yarn through to the other side of the hat. And now we're going to flip our hat inside out when that's done. So once you flipped your hat, I like to just go through one of our double crochets so I can make a little loop, and then thread our needle through that loop just to make a little knot, and I tighten it before I cut it. You don't really have to worry about this because when we add the stem and the leaves, you won't see it. And now we're officially done with the hat part. So now that we are done with the hat, we're going to move on to making our little stem and the leaves. So you can choose any type of green wool that you'd like. So we're going to start by making our leaves and making a slip knot. So to make a slip knot, I like to use my thumb and my index finger on my one hand, and then wrap my yarn around it and then cross it over so it forms like a little ribbon. Once you've done that, we're going to take our thumb and index finger, grab onto our longer piece of yarn and pull it through that loop. And now we have our slip knot. Now we're going to take our hook and insert it into the loop and tighten it, but not too tight. Once it's securely around the hook, we're going to start chaining. So like before, we're going to yarn over the hook and then pull that yarn through the loop. So yarn over and pull through. And we're going to do this for a total of 12 times to make a chain of 12. So once we have our little chain of 12, we are going to do a single crochet into our third stitch. So we're going to count 3, and now unlike our half double crochet and double crochet, we're going to insert a hook directly into the chain, then pull up a loop. So now with 2 loops on the hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through both. So we're going to do one more. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both. Now in our next 2 stitches, we're going to do 2 half double crochets. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's our 2 half double crochets, and now onto our double crochets. So yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, and now we're going to yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And once again, yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2 for our 2 double crochets. So now we're going to do the same thing but mirrored. So we're going to do 2 half double crochets again. So this is our first one and our second one, and now we're going to do 2 single crochets but in our last stitch. We're going to try and do 2 more into the stitch so that we can turn our work around and work on the other part and make the other part of the leaf. So we're doing 1 and 2 more single crochets, and now you can see our work has been turned. And now we're going to just work in the opposite end and the wrong side of the chain. Now this little tail, we're going to work over it before we cut it, just so that it's securely inside of the leaf. So now in our next stitch, we're doing our single crochet, because now technically we already have our 2. And now following the pattern, we're going to do 2 half double crochets again. So 1 and 2, 2 double crochets, so 1 and 2. And now after I do my double crochets, I like to take this little tail and cut it off. Now once you have it cut, we can continue and do our 2 half double crochets again. So 1, 2, and now finally our 2 single crochets. So 1 and 2. Now we have our little leaf, and we're just going to slip stitch into the end of it, pull our yarn through and through again, and then we're going to chain 1 and pull up a decently sized little loop before we cut off the excess. So once you cut it, you can tighten it, and now you're going to need to make 4 more for a total of 5 leaves. So you may pause and rewind to watch that. Now for this stem, we're going to make a magic ring again. So like before, grab your yarn with your thumb, and then using your index and middle finger, wrap your yarn diagonally around it twice to make a cross. Holding our longer piece of the yarn with our other fingers, then we're going to take our hook, insert it underneath the bottom piece of yarn, pull the top piece of yarn past the bottom piece of yarn, and turn your hook so that it faces towards yourself. Once we've done that, we're going to grab our longer piece of yarn and pull it through the loop. If you're confused by the magic ring, you can go to the first part of the video where I made it, because I explained it much slower. Now once again, we use the smaller tail to tighten and the longer tail to work into the magic ring. So firstly, we're going to chain 1 by yarning over and pulling our yarn through that loop. And now we're going to do single crochet. So insert our hook directly in the ring, pull up a loop. With 2 loops on the hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through both. We're going to repeat this for 5 more times for a total of 6. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both loops. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both. And for our last one, we're going to insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both. So now you should have 6 single crochets. And now we can tighten our little circle by pulling on the smaller tail, and then we're going to slip stitch into our first stitch. So insert our hook, pull our yarn through and through again. Now once we've done that, we're going to chain 1 to start our second row, and into the same stitch that we just slip stitched, we're going to do another single crochet. So now we're going to mark our first stitch so that we don't get confused, and once you've marked it, we're going to do another 5 single crochets for a total of 6. I suggest you do count when doing this. So we have our 3rd, our 4th, our 5th, and then our 6th single crochet. Now I'm just going to tighten our little circle again because I saw a little gap. And now the reason I said you should count is because your slip stitch and your chain 1 to start the new row, they may look like stitches, but they are not stitches. So this is why our stitch marker is important and you counting is important. So now we're going to take our stitch marker out of the row, our first stitch, and we're going to slip stitch into that first stitch. So insert our hook, pull up a loop, and then pull our yarn through our second loop. Now once we're done with this second row, I'm going to start the 3rd row and chain 1, but then I'm going to kind of flip this inside out, and we're going to work along this side with our little tail on the inside. So you can put your tail inside, you can just leave it if it doesn't bother you. But now for the rest of the rows, so row 3 to 6, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do 6 single crochets. Don't forget to use your stitch marker to mark that first stitch, so you don't confuse your chain 1 and the slip stitch as actual stitches. And you're going to just repeat doing 6 single crochets all the way across for the next 3 rows. So you may pause the video or just rewind it if you get a little confused. Now when you're done with your 6th row, you'll have a little stem. If you want it to be bigger, you can just do more rows, but I find this size perfect. And then you're going to chain 1 and you're going to pull up a really long loop. So this excess wool that we're going to pull up, we're going to actually use to sew all the leaves and the stem onto the top of the hat. And I'd rather have way more yarn than I need than be short on yarn when I'm actually sewing. So I'm not really a good judge on how much yarn that I do need, so I just pull up a bunch when I make this chain. Now when you're done, you're going to cut the excess and you're going to tighten our little stem. And this is how much yarn I actually pulled up, and trust me, I did not use all of it. But like I said, I'd rather have too much than too little to actually finish sewing. Now once you have all your leaves done and the stem is done, we're going to take a little stem, we're going to open it up a little more at the end because we're actually going to sew all our leaves onto our little stem. So we're going to take a little leaf and take our needle, thread our little tail through the eye of the needle, and now whatever side of the leaf you want to be seen, like you want it on the outside of the hat, you're going to keep that part on top, like facing upwards towards you. Now we're just going to find one of our little stitches, thread our yarn through it, and then through the top of the leaf, making a little loop. And now all we're going to do is just put our needle through that little loop and pull it tight. So we're not actually sewing our leaf on, we're just tightening it onto the stem. And you're just going to repeat this for the next 4 leaves too. So we're just tightening it onto the stem. So you can rewatch that if you get confused. So now I've attached all 5 of my leaves onto the stem, and it looks a bit messy now. So we're going to just tidy this up. So now the longer piece of yarn that's attached to the stem, we're going to keep one side, and all the little tails of yarn, we're going to put it underneath the project, and we're going to take all of these ends and we're going to just tie them together. So we're just doing this to tidy it up a bit, and so that there's not a lot of excess yarn all around the project. And you won't see this because it's going to be sewed down onto the hat, so it doesn't matter what it looks like. But when you're done tying it, you're just going to cut the excess yarn off, so you don't have to worry about that, you won't see it. Once your leaf and stems are all attached together, we're going to get our hat again and thread our yarn through the end of the really long chain. Now when sewing the leaves onto the hat, we're going to work in each petal. So we made 5 leaves because we have a total of 5 sections or 5 petals on the hat. And I like to make sure that my yarn is on the outside, so I'm going to just put it underneath the leaf and pull it through so that it's on the outside or the top of the leaf. So once you make sure that's right, we're going to line our little leaf up in the middle of the petal or the section, and we're just going to insert our hook or our needle directly into our stitches, not like the top of the stitches like we do when we crochet, but rather the stitches itself. So we're going to insert it in and then pull our yarn through, and now we're going to go from the underneath upwards. So we're just doing a basic just sewing into the stitches themselves, and it doesn't matter where you sew into, it's not going to make the hat any tighter around your head or any looser. We're just going to go in and out till about halfway down the leaf. So now I'm going to come back up with my hook through the bottom, and I do like to end though, when I make it halfway down the leaf, end with my yarn on the outside of the hat. So I only sew it about halfway because I like to have this little like leaves standing up, so it just has a little personality. But if you wanted to sew it all the way down, you can do that, you're more than welcome to, but I just do it halfway. So now that we're halfway down the leaf, we're going to go into the other side of the leaf, into those stitches, and we're going to just sew that side down. So once again, we're just going in and out, basic sewing, until we get to the top of our leaf and the stem again. It's a bit awkward recording myself sewing from this angle and with the tripod and the camera, so that is why I am not showing the entire part of this process, but also it is really repetitive, so we're just going to be doing this all the way around on all the leaves. Now once you reach the top of the leaf and everything is sewed on nicely, you're happy with it, we're going to go into the stem itself, just so it's a little more secure on the hat. So I like to go into the stem before I go into the leaf. Now once you go into the leaf, same thorough process, we're just going to go down the one side of the leaf till halfway, and then when we get halfway, we're going to go up the other side and back into the stem, and we're doing this all around. When you are done, you're going to just cut our little tail just a little bit shorter. So this is how much excess wool I had after sewing all the leaves in. but like I said, I'd rather have way more wool than be short on the sewing. And when you're done, we're going to just thread our wool through our needle for the last time. And now I like to just make a small little knot just to secure it. So I'll go into the stem, pull my yarn through, and then just go back through that little loop and make a little knot and tighten it. When I'm done with that, I just start sewing in and out of the stem at random. It doesn't really matter. And then I tuck this little excess tail into the stem itself, and we are done. Now my footage got a little messed up here. I'm not really sure why, so I can't show you how I tucked it in, but if you do struggle to tuck it in, you can just cut the tail a little shorter and then try. If you made it this far into the video, I would love to see how your projects turned out, so you can tag me on Instagram. And I hope you love your little tulip hat as much as I loved making them. Thank you. Bye.